What did you laugh at only to realize it wasn't a joke? Story 1. I work at a nonprofit. My boss needed to fill a position, so he sent me to a job fair to collect some resumes. I found Kevin, a young guy full of energy and enthusiasm with over a decade of fundraising experience. Me. So, when is Kevin starting? Boss. Actually, I hired someone else. Me. Seriously, when is Kevin starting? But it wasn't a joke. Boss hired a dim-witted, sleepy old guy with no discernible skills. I guess he felt they had more in common. 3 years later, the old guy got fired for never actually finishing a single project. Yeah, he's pretty horrible about getting rid of people. Another coworker of mine infested the office with fleas, but he didn't get fired until he did it a second time. The first time it happened, the boss closed down the office and had an exterminator come in and told the guy, "Here's a laptop, you telecommunicate now." It turned out he lived in a trailer with over a dozen stray cats. He kept taking in these strays and just not doing anything for them. No shots, no flea treatments, and not even a bath. So pretty soon the whole place was infested with fleas. He just didn't realize how bad it was because he was on some sort of mixture of medications that made him smell weird. Apparently the smell made the fleas not want to bite him. They just got in his clothes and he carried them to work. After a few days, he was already complaining to my boss that the laptop didn't work right. My boss tried to send me to this guy's trailer to fix whatever was wrong, but I said I would rather quit than set foot in Fleapalooza 2012. So he told my coworker to just deal with it himself. A couple weeks later, the guy came into the office to pick up his paycheck. In 30 seconds he was inside, he infested the place again. After that, everyone threw a fit. The boss only fired the guy to avoid a full-scale revolt. Man, I hope Kevin's doing okay. Justice for Kevin. Story 2. This happened to me a few days ago. I received a private Facebook message of what I can only call word soup. It was seemingly random, but just barely cohesive enough to make a sentence at times. I really like riding that uncanny valley. I assumed it was some sort of bot that used Markov chains like Subreddit Simulator, from scraping posts on my friends list because I had references to things, places, and people I knew, and even posted photos of people's albums. So I screenshotted it and posted it because it was legitimately hilarious. I mean, it had such winners as, "If you love her, you have to prove all others are inferior to you in bed, with Jill." I was like, "Hey everyone, check out this weird ramblings of this bot." An hour or so later, got a message from another friend that explained that this was actually an old mutual friend from high school who had suffered a psychotic break and was schizophrenic. Sometimes he goes off his meds or his family doesn't keep an eye on him and he makes tons of Facebook accounts and messages this stuff to people. They'd been getting them for years and must have fallen into his crosshairs. Suddenly, it wasn't so funny anymore and was rather tragic. Deleted the post and continued to block the next 67 aliases that kept sending stuff like that all night. Went from hilarious to sad to alarming in the span of a few hours. That sounds crazy. I was legitimately laughing till the end when I just felt really bad for that guy. Word soup. That's surprisingly accurate. The actual medical term is word salad. Story 3. 2 years ago today, I was getting the kids ready to go to a local water park. My husband was taking out the trash. His phone rang. I answered. His mom, who was supposed to be meeting us at the water park, said she really needed to talk to my husband immediately. He walked in the dot at that moment. I handed him the phone. A minute goes by and he says, "I'll be right there," and drops his phone on the table. He looked at the ceiling and said, "My sister is dead." I was thinking he meant like she got in trouble in the "oh my god, my parents are gonna kill me" type of way, since he said it so calmly, so I grinned at him and said, "What did she do?" Then he said, "She overdosed." Oh my god. The phone rang at 2 a.m. when I was 15. I figured it was one of my friends calling, so I snatched it up before I could ring twice and wake my parents. My grandma's voice, very shaky, says, "Shira, Grandpa's dead." I laughed and yelled, "Are you serious? No way!" I burst into tears and laughed fit while my dad came and grabbed the phone. My granddad abused me from the time I was 3 until I was 9. That phone call was a big step in the healing process. Edit. Your post reminded me of my inappropriate phone call response, but I meant to hit reply to main thread, not you in particular. I still feel bad for the way I reacted to my poor grandma, but in her grief and shock, I'm pretty sure she didn't notice. I'm sorry. Oh my god, hope you're okay now. That's horrible. Story 4. My friend's grandmother died. When I asked how she died, she said she choked on a piece of banana. My wife's grandma died, and I told my work that I need a few hours off to attend the funeral. Boss's response was, "That's terrible. How is she?" To which I said, she's dead." Not my brightest moment when I realized he was asking about my wife. I was at work one morning when my girlfriend called me. She's clearly in shock. All she says is, "My mom said, I'm not going to work. You can stay at work." So I told my boss and drove to her house. Yep. Mom's dead. The coroner takes her away. The immediate family have to go deal with things. My girlfriend tells me to go back to work because there's nothing I can do to help with the stuff they have to do. I don't like it, but I will go back. I walk in and one of the guys asks me, "How is she?" And without even thinking, I just say, "She's dead. There really isn't much they could do." Yeah, everyone in the room was mortified. When I realized what I said, I burst out laughing. That made everyone even more mortified. I was at a pirate-themed costume party, and a woman was dressed as the coin from the first Pirates of the Caribbean. The costume was pretty big. You could only see her head and legs, so shouted across the room, "Hey, it looks like you have no arms." To which she replied that she didn't. I laughed it off thinking she was just joking. Nope, she literally had no arms. I've never been more mortified in my life. Okay, but think, you might have lived what would later become a bystander's favorite story to tell. I know if I saw this happen to someone, I'd never stop telling people. And then she said, no, don't. And she wasn't joking. She didn't have any arms. The guy was mortified. That's great. Anyways, would you like fries with that? Story 5. I was chatting with an elderly security guard at the movies, and he was talking about having a degree he never used. He said, now I only use it to decorate my bedroom wall. I laughed and he said, you laugh now. I laugh about it sometimes, but I cry most of the time. The other day I requested an Uber and made small talk with the driver. It turns out he was a civil engineer making good money, but moved to the US due to family reasons. It's very sad to hear these types of things. Edit. So this took place in New Jersey, and the driver is Dominican. He told me how he worked on residential buildings that were located in small towns, to cooperate with others to make a building or two located in Santo Domingo, the capital. He understands English and can speak it fairly well, but we mainly spoke Spanish because I really love speaking my native tongue. Oh man, can relate to this. Well, I mean my dad. He studied his butt off in China to get a good degree, but came to France with my mom because they were told life was better here. Well, I don't really know if it's that much better. His best friend who stayed in China got a degree somewhat similar to his, and is now one of the lead engineers for General Motors in the USA, while my parents are running a Japanese restaurant. Not sure France was worth it. Good for the best friend, but God, that must suck. I'm so sorry. Story 6. Going to middle school and needing to make a phone call home before I had a cell phone. From the office, the secretary said it'll cost you 50 cents. I laughed. She didn't. That was the moment I realized that despite being a good kid, adults suddenly wouldn't like me or trust me simply because I was in middle school. It was jarring. What kind of school makes a kid pay to call home? My middle school and high school had payphones near the front door. If you asked the office about calling home, they pointed at the payphones and said they hoped you had some coins on you. If you didn't have the money, you were out of luck unless a friend walked by and offered to loan you what you needed. My mom went a little loopy when I was in middle school, refused to let me take the bus, insisted on driving me to and from school, but often showed up anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours late to pick me up. So I spent a lot of time and money on that payphone trying to reach her. I was pretty ignorant in high school, and our friend group was one that would bust each other all the time without many boundaries. A friend was telling us about how his father died of breast cancer at the lunch table. I thought he was messing with me, so I kept laughing, telling him to quit his BS. Me being a freaking dumb teenager, assumed only women could get breast cancer, and just rolled my eyes when he kept saying it was true. This proceeded for the entire lunch period. It wasn't until after lunch period was over and someone else came up to me and confirmed the fact that I realized what a gigantic butthole I had just been. I've witnessed the exact same scenario when a friend didn't believe my best friend's brother had unalived the night before. When lunch was over, I pulled him aside and he still didn't believe me. Story 7. The guy who worked at my old job came up to me one day and said, "Your car's been crushed." I laughed. He insisted that I go outside and look. A trucker had knocked down the I-beam, which holds up the gate I was parked right next to. It just barely scratched my bumper and headlight cover. I filed a claim and pocketed about $500. Props to that guy for preparing me for the worst. Someone a couple years ago in my town had their car go into a sinkhole and got totaled. I imagine that was interesting to find. You have 30 minutes to move your car. You have 10 minutes. Your car has been impounded. Your car has been crushed into a cube. You have 30 minutes to move your cube. Wouldn't want my car to be a cube, but the thought of owning a cube car is pretty cool. Story 8. A girl withering around on the ground at a festival thought it was performance art. She was actually having a really bad acid trip and paramedics were rushing over. The looks from her friends as I lamely tried to explain myself will haunt my dreams. One time my dog had a seizure and fell into the laundry basket and it looked like he was dancing. It was pretty funny. My son was mortified. My boyfriend at the time had a dog that ate the crotch out of underwear. Clean or dirty, she ate them. We used to put the waistband around her neck like a trophy. Only a few minutes. They were not tight on her neck at all. She was always mildly ashamed looking. One time I went to do it and she whimpered and started to have a seizure, even wet herself. I felt freaking horrible, like I had traumatized her into a full-blown seizure. We never did it again, and I still feel awful about it to this day. Oh God, please tell me the first guy didn't start throwing money at the poor lady or something. Story 9. Monday morning, a guy comes up to my desk and says my car is on fire. I respond laughing and saying, "Okay." Guy says, "No, I'm serious." Look out office window, 10-foot flames shooting out of the hood of my car. Edit. Saw people asking about make and model. So it was a 1996 Ford Crown Victoria Prever. There was a lawsuit over it at one point. Tried looking a bit, only one I found was on the tank. Issue for early 2000 models. How did your car catch on fire? Apparently there was a few years that those cars would spontaneously catch fire. I don't remember what it was exactly, but something was faulty, obviously. It was a story about a guy who had one in his garage for 3 days and it just burst into flames and burnt his house down. Jeez, that poor guy. I hope he got some good money in the lawsuit. Story 10. A young lady in the choir who had beautifully dark hair, lustrous long Italian, arrived at rehearsal as a blonde. Thanks to this really fake looking wig she had on over her natural hair, it screamed fake wig and looked like she was trying to be funny, just to bring a little light humor to rehearsal. One of the tenors asked, "Did you get that wig from Sears?" She said, "Actually, yes." At which point everyone laughed and she thought it looked great, whereas everyone else thought it looked so unnatural and wrong on her. So relieved to get to the end of your comment and not find out she had cancer and that started chemo. Just a bad wig for no reason. Carry on. I also thought that's where this was heading. I was in preemptive cringe. Story 11. Last year when a couple of veterinary students, myself included, were having lunch, I lose track of a conversation while on my phone and only heard the back end where a friend started listing symptoms. Jakily, they suggested they test the dog for Addison's disease. She was talking about her mom's chemo side effects. Story 12. One of my most uptight friends is a Reiki healer. When she first told me, I burst into a fit of laughter. I thought she was making fun of herself. She was serious. Went out for drinks with friends from high school I haven't seen in a while. I complimented the one's crystal rings and she goes, "Thanks, I feel like they're losing their power though. I put them in the sun for most of the days to soak up its energy, but they're not working as well lately." My other friend almost spit our drinks out, but then noticed she wasn't joking. That was the longest convo I've ever had about crystals, and good vibes. Story 13. Please keep in mind, I was like 11. Back when I lived in a foster group home, me and some of the older guys were playing on the Xbox. One of my foster brothers stopped and started making funny faces at me. He was a chill guy and we got along well and joked together, so I laughed and made faces back. He was having a seizure. I had a friend that had seizures frequently. A group of us were leaving a restaurant and he made a mean face, stuck his arms out and pointed at the car in front of us. Another friend said, "Man, he really hates that freaking car." Yep, seizure. Okay, this actually made me laugh. Is that bad? Story 14. I have a slight hearing problem, which has led to several awkward faux pas situations. The worst one was when I was a cashier at Walgreens. A woman came up to pay and I asked her how she was doing and she replied with a sigh and said, "Oh, just found out." I couldn't hear the second part, so I just asked her to repeat. I still couldn't hear the second part and I didn't want to make her keep repeating, but her delivery sounded like a joke, so I politely laughed. She gave me the dirtiest look and said, "What's so funny about my husband having cancer?" I definitely heard her that time. Alright, but in your defense, who the heck announces that kind of information to a Walgreens cashier? You'd be surprised what people tell cashiers. I was definitely surprised. People would sometimes treat me like a free therapist, especially when it was slower over at the beauty counter. Edit, making me look bad. Story 15. Good morning, ma'am. We've just arrested your husband for statutory assault. Did you know your husband was having an affair with one of his female students? Yeah, it wasn't a joke. To be fair, I wouldn't expect cops to go around pranking people by telling them that their SO is a spicy time assaulter. Right? It was so out of character for him, and I honestly did not have a clue. I was sure they made a mistake and had the wrong guy. My very next thought was, how could he have assaulted someone? He's not even having spicy time with me. Oh, gotcha. Story 16. Your dad just cut us off with a push mower. Pro tip. If you ever have to mess with the mower blade, disconnect the spark plug and wedge the blade with a hunk of wood for maximum safety. Turning the blade from underneath can generate a little current in the engine and start the mower. Same as calling the theater cord. Edit, Google search for push mower. You will notice that there are mowers with motors as well as without in the top results. This is not an uncommon usage. Thanks for the safety warning. I'll be doing this from now on. Story 17. At college orientation, my group was told that we were going to see an improv show later in the day when we got there. It was one of those acting tropes that does shows about alcohol poisoning and date stuff and stuff like that. We all kind of tried to politely laugh through the show because we felt bad that it wasn't funny or even well done, and we were under the pretense that it was a comedy. We totally got yelled at, but at least one guy pointed out that we were just trying to be nice to a group that we were told were comedians. I hate morality ambushes. I'm thankful my orientation stayed focused more on, we know you've got a lot of newfound freedom, but we're just trying to help you be smart about what you do with it, than immediately assuming we're hendas and bots. Story 18. I was a preteen at Bible camp, and one of the leaders was sharing the story of his upbringing. It got really intense, and he ended that intense part of the story with, "And now my brother's an alcoholic." His tone and the timing was rather comedic, and I thought he was doing that to break some tension, and without thinking anything else of it, let out a huge organic, "Ha!" Everyone turned to me. I tried to fake a coughing fit to play it off. Don't think it was very convincing. Impossible. The coughing fit always works for me in situations like that. Story 19. One of my best friends, a twin in college, told me that she was pregnant. She had played jokes on me before, so I laughed and said, "No freaking way, you're the smart one." I didn't believe my wife was pregnant for like 2 weeks before I realized it wasn't a joke. I was sitting in the doctor's office thinking, wow, she sure is taking that thing pretty far. Okay, darling, it's been 6 months, stop it already, it's not funny anymore. Story 20. My brother got his face blown off by a shotgun, she said. For some reason, my brain immediately short-circuited and thought of a Bugs Bunny cartoon. Daffy Duck getting shot in the face, his duckbill landing some few feet away. I laughed. The girl looked at me in horror. I tried to explain. I failed. I can't imagine an explanation for that not failing. Story 21. I introduced myself to a gentleman who said, "My name is X, or you can call me Grey Wolf." And I kinda chuckle-snorted, but then instantly realized, oh, you're part native, aren't you? Yup. To be fair, however, this was in the Space Coast of Florida. I would have thought he was a furry, to be honest. Furries traditionally introduce themselves with a, "Ooh, what's this?" Story 22. Back in high school during lunch, I sat at a table with this kid that just couldn't eat his food without looking like he was passing over a kidney stone. I laughed and asked him to relax and slow down because it wasn't a race. One of the kids at the table told me he had Tourette's and those were his tics. Felt terrible and immediately apologized. Story 23. Your sister is 10 weeks pregnant. I should have expected everyone to take this the wrong way. Well, maybe you shouldn't sleep with your sister then. Story 24. My cousin dated a girl named Fear. I laughed and she got mad. Whoops, you laughed in the face of fear. Nope, that's not your fault, that's her parents' fault. Story 25. Years ago, a coworker told me to never drink water from a pond with a beaver dam because I could get beaver fever. Laughed, he informed me that it's a real thing and his dad died of it. Guardia. It felt so bad. I mean, in all fairness, it's called beaver fever. Story 26. One time I walked into my school and looked at my friend who was very upset and said, "What happened? Your cat died?" It's an Italian saying. And he said, "No, my mom did." I laughed for a while because he was one to make those types of jokes. Little did I know. Story 27. I've had people laugh when they say, "My dad is a crackhead," and say, "Oh yeah, my dad is like that too," and then have to explain that my dad is literally addicted to crack and steals money from my family. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe for more videos to come, or else this spider will be in your bed tonight.